I didn't work at McDonald's when the Angus burger was there. No. I remember working at McDonald's when they did the it was originally not made fresh. So, just make heaps of them and then line up.
Oh, bring it home on Sunday.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, hello. We're back. We're talking about McDonald's because we both used to work.
We both worked at McDonald's.
We both used to work at McDonald's.
It was actually a rite of passage for the family.
It was. I think everybody in the family
There's
worked.
5 boys. There's 5 of us, and everyone's first job was McDonald's.
Yes.
So we were reminiscing of the days.
Yes, when we had to work the hard jobs compared to just playing games and talking about it all day. But we're back today. Interesting. I saw this overnight, and I think this may be a day or so old, but I want to talk about this because I'm surprised that Cyberpunk 2077 is at the top of the charts for PlayStation 4 after being released for the second time and 6 months of it having some of the worst, buggy, horrendous PR.
Just
bad press that we've ever seen for any game.
Let's get into it. People don't care. And I mean, more power to them.
I mean, I guess, but let's talk about it after the drop. Alright, so look, we don't really need to go into it, but for a good old 10:01, should we go into what happened? No, I'm kidding.
8:01 now.
8:01, just kidding. But look, as you guys know, in a quick 20 seconds, everyone knows, of course, it came out in December, early December. It was taken off the PlayStation 4 store because it was such a horrendous, buggy mess. The actual review process was very murky. They didn't give us actual console code. They only gave us PC code. And even the PC code was extraordinarily buggy. When I did my review, I actually dedicated a big slot to how buggy this whole thing was. Since then, we've seen, the CEO of CD Projekt Red come out and do, a video apology. We've seen apologies on Twitter and, promises to fix the game with a roadmap that's extraordinarily murky, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that one?
It's like, it's funny. So find the image, we'll slot it in. It literally just has until 2022. I think the word
Things
is
changing.
Various bug fixes or like, I don't know. It's very vague. But look, I think in light of the re-release of Cyberpunk onto the PSN last June, the numbers are in, and we see that it was actually the highest download game on the PSN.
It has been.
And that's fascinating.
It is fascinating. Before we even get there, are we going to see a Cyberpunk Director's Cut?
I mean...
Are we going to see a Cyberpunk Director's Cut for PS5? I reckon people would line up for that. Legit. If people are lining up for this buggy mess still 6 months on, then God, I think people would line up for the Director's Cut.
I think if CD Projekt Red tried to get any more money out of this game until they've really fixed it and released some extra content, they'd be digging their own graves.
Well, they already have been digging their own grave. Now, of course, we know that there's been a lot of fixes. One important thing to also point out, we pointed this out in a few videos ago when we were talking about Cyberpunk last time, is when you are actually purchasing the game on the Sony website as well as the CD Projekt Red website and on Cyberpunk's Twitter, they have a lot of warnings about base consoles, performance issues, all this kind of stuff. Be wary of bugs and issues, and the optimal performance is going to be on PS5 or on PS4 kind of stuff, right? The interesting thing is, let's see the games that it has beaten in the last 9 days to take out the top spot for the most purchased game on the PlayStation Store network.
So yeah, we're talking about mainstays of the top charts for PlayStation, GTA 5 and FIFA, NBA, Call of Duty Black Ops, all of these big hitters that are usually right at the top of the lists month over month.
And this is in North
With
America
exceptions, of course, because of, new releases. Cyberpunk takes the top spot. And normally, as I said earlier, that's because of new releases. You could almost treat this as if it is a new release. It was
In a way.
I mean, it was only a matter of days that Cyberpunk was available for digital purchase.
For PlayStation 4.
Yeah. And a lot of people are very cautious when they buy games, on launch. They'll wait till reviews come out. The reviews came out. It was obviously a shit show. And 6-7 months later, they've done some work on updating it. Admittedly, it's not available. It's available, but not recommended to be played on base PS4s. It's recommended...
Or base Xboxes.
Yes. But not recommended to be played on the base launch models of the respective consoles of last generation. It's more for the Pro and Series X lines. People, obviously, they waited. And they waited, and they didn't buy it, and then it was pulled from the PSN. Now it's back for sale, and it's number one. So, I mean... It's interesting. I wonder if those people had intended on buying it and just couldn't, and now that it's available, they're doing it, or if they've kept up with the updates over time and see that the game is now in a state where it's apparently it's in quite a decent state on those Pro models.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about it is that there was no sort of fanfare about its re-release. There was a couple of tweets. There was no, there was probably there was a press release, but there was no, as has been noted by a few people online, there was no grand Cyberpunk is back presence on the PSN. There was no relaunch. There was no rebranding. There was nothing. Like, you had to scroll through the PSN to find Cyberpunk if you weren't searching for it. It wasn't made readily it didn't make itself aware, and yet it's crushing it. So, I mean, that speaks volumes to, I guess, people's interest in it.
What I find
credit where it's due.
What I find interesting is this came out, of course, in December. People had plenty of opportunity to, of course, purchase it. Now, we've seen the figures before in terms of the refund.
Wait, sorry. You mean plenty of opportunity to purchase it where?
On PlayStation 4 at the beginning of it, before it was
taken off. But it wasn't even that on. It wasn't on for that big of a window.
Most people would have either pre-ordered it or the day one, if they really wanted to play it, they would have purchased it. It wasn't taken off the first day. It was actually taken off, I think, a week or so after. There was a decent amount of time for people that have been waiting for this game to jump in and play it. What's interesting for me is now it's back on the store. What has changed? Why have people think, oh, I can go back now and purchase this? The only thing I can possibly think of is a lot of people aren't in the know of gaming. They don't, they're not going to be following the whole journey and process of Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red trying to fix this. They may have just seen this now back on the store and thought, it's fixed or whatever, or it's available again. I'm going to purchase this and not be fully aware of how buggy this game truly is still.
Well, apparently
may have not also seen the warning signs on Twitter on the official Sony store, and a lot of people, although this is at the top of of the sales for Europe and North America, I worry that some people, they haven't been keeping up to it and they just saw it back on the PS Store, purchased it thinking it was completely fixed, and they are now disappointed with it. I wonder if that's the case.
I think credit where it's due is not the right phrase, because the launch state of Cyberpunk deserves no credit at all. But to say that, you must also acknowledge that from reports, it actually seems to be in a reasonably good state on PS4 Pro and Series X. So it's I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's fair to say that it's as, it's certainly not as buggy as it was. It's certainly in a state where it's playable. And it's certainly in a state where Sony will in a position. Oh, that's his ringtone.
Potential fraud.
He's got his PlayStation 1 ringtone and his PlayStation hoodie.
Some potential fraud is calling me. Anyway,
I think you have to acknowledge that big steps have been taken to getting the game into a state that is now playable. So that we can't take away from that. It still doesn't forgive them for their sins, but I think what we're looking at here, and this is me hypothesizing, is that when you buy a game, when I certainly buy a game, if I wait for the review cycle, I just do. I don't pre-order anything. I wait to see what the reviews are. The reviews for Cyberpunk were obviously not very good.
Well, actually, I think they were muddled. Some people were like, hey, this is really buggy, and some people were giving this 10 out of 10.
Sure. But I think there was little argument to be had about the state of the consoles on launch. So I think a lot of people would have been...
Well, yes, there was, because only certain publications got code for console like a day before the embargo was finished.
I understand.
So I think the devil's in the details here, because a lot of people didn't actually fully get to experience this on console. A lot of people just played it on PC, like myself and a lot of other YouTubers and a lot of reviewers in general. So people weren't able to give an actual accurate description of what this was going to really be on console. That's why in my review I didn't speak about console, because I didn't have console code. It only came to light later that only certain people a day before or something got actual code for the console. That's not enough time to fully explore this, and this comes back to my idea of, just quickly, this comes back to my idea of, we should hold CD Projekt Red accountable for what they did, but I always retain that the bones of this game are exceptional. I really do think that. If this wasn't a buggy mess, the world it's created, the narrative, the experience that you can have in Cyberpunk, if it's a bug-free experience, is pretty cool, man. And I think that when this does actually get fully fixed, and it's 6 months on now, 7 months on now, we're still seeing a buggy experience for some people. It's only when that's fully fixed, I think, that we can start really looking at this game as it is intended to be, and we're not there yet.
Look, I mean, I agree with all that, but I think it's also important on your earlier point about, you know, the fact that people bought it not knowing the state it was in. It's also important to remember that you had basically a no questions asked refund policy on Xbox's side until last month.
Yep.
And a very open refund policy on Sony's end, and with the well documented pulling of Cyberpunk from the store. So there are a lot of people that might have been duped and bought it, but then got their money back anyway. Maybe now 6 months down the track, they're going back in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So look, I mean, it's number one on PlayStation. Like, that's probably a good thing.
I don't think it is, personally.
I think it probably is a good thing.
I don't. I'll tell you why. Because a lot of other developers and studios are going to look at this and go, you know what, we can release a completely buggy mess, have one of the worst PR situations ever to emerge in gaming, and we can still get the top spot in the charts 6 months later when we decide to release it again on PlayStation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's maybe not the greatest precedent being set here. That's all I'm saying, you know?
I think people will probably disagree with me. I think if people want to buy a product, it's been 7 months off the PSN, and it's been absent for so long that
I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to buy it.
I'm saying though is that there's been certainly long enough for people to have done research and found out whether or not this game is in a good state. I think if people want to buy this, then more power to them. If they really wanted it, they could have just bought a physical copy.
Yeah,
you know,
or PC, or like if they have another place to buy.
So look, I think if people want this as badly as they obviously do, it is in the number one spot on the PlayStation Network.
Yeah,
I say that's probably a good thing because people are spending the money where they want to spend it.
Yeah,
you know, the only thing I would say off the back of that is now that because Sony have basically got no refund policy once you've downloaded a game. If it isn't quite in the state that people hope it was, then they're kind of up the creek without a paddle.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, there's got to be a certain point, I think, of buyer beware. They've had 7 months to beware. You know, so
I hear what you're saying there.
That's what I think about the matter.
I agree with you. If a toaster is on the market and it's broken, people should be able to buy it still. You know, if you want to buy that broken toaster, that's on you. No, I'm just kidding.
But look, what I mean to say is, like, you haven't got. There are very few instances where a developer as cherished as CD Projekt Red have fallen from grace as hard as they have.
They've definitely paid for it.
Everyone knows about it.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about it. I think if you're moderately in the know, you know about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know, like, this isn't like a no-brand toaster. This is Cyberpunk. People know what they're getting themselves into. And if they're really cautious, if they don't quite want to be jumping in to the deep end, go buy a physical copy.
Yeah. Go
to EB Games or GameStop or whatever and do a refund that way. That's how you can beware. But yeah, I think this is probably a good thing, and you know, it gives them even more ammunition. It gives them even more motivation to get this game to exactly where it needed to be on launch. You know, so yeah,
we'll have to see, guys. But again, we just want to report this today. I think it is interesting to see that this. Yeah, I mean, it's at the top spot. I didn't think that was going to happen. I really didn't. But again, before we finish, it does show that regardless of what kind of bugginess you come out with, the brand itself, the hype of 8 years of people waiting for Cyberpunk, it still can pay off. So anyway, we'll have to see what happens. We'll keep you updated, I guess, with other stuff that happens with Cyberpunk 2077.
And news in general.
And news in general. Until then, we might be doing Skyward Sword, guys. We
might actually review Skyward Sword. I guess we digress from the topic, but I really don't like Skyward Sword.
Which will be an interesting topic to see if you come back after 10 years or whatever.
Yeah, I want to play it.
Like it.
I never actually finished it. So yeah, we'll give it a go.
We'll see you guys next time. Laymen out.
Take it easy.